Welcome guys. So what I'm going to be doing with you today is looking at this health and social care paper for Unit 1, Human Lifespan Development. Now I've selected this paper from January 2018, mainly because it's one of the oldest papers that are available. So you've got the summer of 2017 and then January of 18. I think the January 18 paper is the first paper that kind of fits the style that's developed within these health and social care exams. So this is one I've picked. It's also one that's quite readily available online. I've been able to find it on a number of forums and another number of groups, so I'm not too worried about using this paper because it's one that's already been out there for quite some time and discussed a lot. So what I want to talk about initially is just a little bit about the structure of this paper. So you can see here on the right hand side, this exam paper is broken into 3 sections: section A, or question 1, section B, or question 2, and section C, or question 3. Each of them are worth 30 marks, and they have a very kind of sort of structure that's formed within them. So there's always a short context, a case study, a character, or a situation presented to you in this exam paper. What happens is throughout each stage of the questioning, the case study is developed, or new characters are introduced, or the focus is shifted from one member of the family to another. In section A, there is 20 marks worth of questions that can range from 1 markers up to 6 markers. So it could be any combination, 1, 2, 4, 6, any combination of question there. And then you're presented with a 10 marker at the end. Section B has 10 marks of these kind of random combination, 1 through 6 markers. The general combination is normally 2, 4, 4, or 4 and 6. And then you'll have 2 10 markers. And then in questions, section C, question 3, again, slightly smaller, you get 10 marks worth of kind of shorter random questions. So normally, again, a 4 and a 6, or a 2, 4, 6, and then you get 2 10 markers. But question 3, again, a number of papers I've seen has 4 questions, so A, B, C, and D. So normally it's 4, 6, 10, 10. So they're the kind of topic areas. In this exam, just to kind of remind you of what you would have covered in the content, the teacher materials. Section A is all about the physical growth and development. Section B was all about environmental factors, and then section C was always about age-related needs and aging. Now, I think it's always a little bit confusing. The exam paper is A, B, C, or question 1, 2, 3. The teaching of the pack doesn't match that. So section A of this exam isn't going to just be about physical growth or pies. Section B isn't just about environmental. It kind of, all these overlap and are continuously popping up throughout. With 10 markers, there are some command words just to be aware of. Again, I'll talk about these when we get to a 10 marker, but just a reminder, discuss questions when you to talk about a range of issues relating to an issue. Evaluate asks you to try and bring a judgment in, the pros and the cons of an issue. Justify is generally you're supporting the statement, the idea, the factor, and you're providing evidence to justify reasoning behind that action. And then to what extent, again, you're trying to support an argument. So to what extent is that significant? But again, you can question how effective it is. Really, the main thing about 10 markers, try and cover both sides of the debate, try to outline the topic, try to apply a theory where possible. And then just some tips for the paper before we get into it really is, when you're looking at questions, make sure you read the item, the scenario, the context of the characters, and be familiar or clear on what is being stated. Take a minute to plan questions. Really important for 10 markers. Take a minute to plan and think about what you are going to say. Refer back and link to the points in the context, the case study, the characters. Refer to these individuals. Try and make sure you're using a theory and study within the 10 markers. And again, when you're making a point, when you're making an argument, be specific. Try and make it clear what you are saying and what that has to do with the question. So avoid long, lengthy waffles. One of the big things about this paper is it is an hour and 30 minutes and is worth 90 marks. It's mark a minute style paper. So for every mark of that question, whether it's a 1 marker, 10 marker, you don't really want to spend more time than you need to on the question because it's going to have an impact later on. So do think about what you're saying, how you're writing it, and how much time you're spending on topics. Okay, so let's move down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start looking at section A, or question 1, and that's question A1, or sorry, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and 1A. It's worth a total of 30 marks, so it should take 30 minutes. But again, anytime you save in early questions, you can use to support yourself in the 10 markers. What we'll do, as always, is we'll take a look at the question, we'll write some answers, plan them up, and then potentially time sort of factoring in, we will come back and potentially go through the mark scheme. So let's take a look at this first question. So Patricia is 20 years old. She has a 2-year-old daughter called Joy. Patricia has recently separated from her long-term boyfriend and decided to move out of the flat she shared with him. They've decided to live with her grandmother Beatrice. Beatrice is 78 and has been widowed since her husband Derek died, aged 56. Now it says premature death can be an unpredictable life event, and the first question here asks for 2 unpredictable life events. It's a 2 marker. We're just going to state them. So looking at our answer here, again, unpredictable life events were events where you couldn't prepare for them, can't really plan for them. They happen without much preparation. So examples would be obviously an unpredictable life event. We could put divorce would be an unpredictable life event. Another unpredictable life event could be obviously redundancy or loss of employment. That's the 2 answers I'm going to put: divorce / redundancy or loss of employment. You could phrase it anyway. Actually, I'm going to take a gamble. I'm just going to put redundancy rather than loss of employment. There we go. So there's our 2 done. So 1B, we're going to move on to next, is Beatrice is in the life stage of later adulthood. So we know from the item it said that she is 78. Identify 4 life stages Beatrice has already passed through. And at this point, she's gone through all the life stages, being in later adulthood. So obviously she would have been an infant or infancy, 1 life stage. We've also put the range here. So infancy, which is 0 to 2. Then we've got which would have moved into childhood, which is going to be 3 to 8. After childhood comes adolescence. Spell it adolescence. No, ado. There we go. Get it eventually. Adolescence begins at 9, covers puberty, and normally runs until 18 when you're deemed to be an adult. After that, you enter early adulthood. Is from 19 to 40. Obviously, that's our 4. Wouldn't need to put any more. Obviously, just to continue, obviously, because we're talking about life stages. The next one that comes after that is middle adulthood, which is 46 to 65. And then the current life stage she's in is later adulthood. So we wouldn't put, obviously, she hasn't passed through later adulthood yet, as the question asked, so we wouldn't put that one there. But obviously we could, you could start childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, middle adulthood, or you could have done infancy, early adulthood, infancy, adolescence. So as long as you got the 4 in the correct order. I'm going to take middle adulthood off because we don't need that for this question. Right, 1C. Let's have a look at roll on to 1C. So we've got another 4-mark question. We're trying to make 4 points essentially for 4 minutes. So it says Joy is 2 years old and will be going through important stages of growth and development. Explain the difference between growth and development. So this is a nice easy one because essentially we're going to make a statement, provide an example, and then we're going to have in the middle whereas. That's going to be our seesaw word in the middle of these statements. So we're going to start with growth, because obviously that's what we've been asked, difference in growth and development. Growth is the increase in physical mass, size, or height. And can be measured by, just put as and can be measured. We'll leave it there. Whereas development relates the acquisition of skills and abilities. Walking, running, jumping. These are followed, or I'm going to put measured using milestones. So I've probably gone a little bit more over than you need to, but the main thing I've got here is growth is the increase in physical mass or size or height. So I've kind of defined it and given some examples, and can be measured. So I've made 2 points. I've then got whereas, our seesaw word, our middle ground seesaw word, and then development relates to acquisition of skills and abilities. Again, acquisition is a bit of a fancy word. Relates to the gaining of skills and abilities, e.g. walking, running, jumping. And then as a little extra bit there, these are measured using milestones. So I've covered a range of points. Essentially, that these covered by milestones isn't necessary really, but it never hurts to put in that one extra little bit of detail if you've got the time to just make sure you meet the criteria. Okay, let's scroll on down. So describe the difference between a fine motor skill and a gross motor skill. So again, we're looking at another one of these questions. We're going to use our seesaw word as whereas in the middle, and we're going to literally say this is one, whereas this is the other. So gross motor skills involve, I've got to spell it right, involve larger muscle movements and relate to and are used for running, walking, moving, whereas fine motor skills, smaller muscles which are used for more precise movements such as picking things up or manipulating objects. So again, we're thinking about how we've organized this. We've defined it. What are the gross motor skills? Large muscles. We've then given examples: running, walking, moving. Seesaw word in the middle, whereas, and then fine motor skills are small muscle movements and are used for more precise. I'm going to put change movements to actions rather than using the word movements again. More precise actions such as picking things up or manipulating objects. So I think again that's quite simple definition. What it is, here's an example, whereas here's the other thing, here's an example of the other thing. So there we go, that's 1D covered. And now we move on to 1E. Now at this point we've done a number of questions. 1E is going to be our 6 marker. As I said, section A, or question 1, has sort of 20 marks worth of short questions. So the question 1F is going to be our first 10 marker. So 1E. So it says Patricia left sixth form early and did not complete her BTEC Health and Social Care course. Unlike you guys looking at this question right now, Beatrice was offered, has offered to look after Joy and take her to playgroup. Patricia has now decided to return to college and complete her education. Explain the impact on Patricia's self-concept for returning to education. Now this again, I will see this as a 1+1 style response. So you could say 3 things with 3 examples or 3 impacts to meet your criteria. So 1+1, obviously you can put, we'll do a second 1+1, We'll do a third 1 plus 1. So again, we're kind of trying to make sure we're making 6 points to pick up 6 marks. So obviously we're thinking about Patricia's self-concept. So one thing we could say is this would be, you know, Patricia's, how to spell Patricia's name? Patricia. Oh, there we go. I've put Patricia. Patricia. Oh, I just not put a capital one. Right, Patricia's self esteem. I know it's not the same as self-concept, but I'll come back to self-concept. Will rise due to returning to college. This will make her feel proud of herself and increase her self. Make sure I spell proud right. There we go. So we've come back to, you know, she raise her self-esteem because she's returning to college, and then this will make her feel proud of herself and increase her self-esteem. That's our first 1 plus 1. We'll move that down. The second 1 plus 1 that we could come up with, maybe, or see, we're thinking about how her self-esteem could be impacted upon. Doesn't say whether that's positive or negative. So we could say Patricia's. Name right, Patricia's self-concept could be negatively as she may feel guilty for leaving her daughter to return to college. So yeah, so the fact she's gone back to college, she may feel guilty for leaving her daughter. That could have a negative impact. So the idea being that she doesn't feel good. And again, obviously Patricia left sixth form. She's gone on, had a child. She's now gone back to sixth form. So we can imagine Patricia is probably going to be older. So Patricia will be older than the other students and may feel out of place. This could have a negative effect on her self-esteem. Oh, sorry, self-concept, as she may not feel let's go welcome. So again, what we've done, I know it's another negative, but we could have easily gone for a positive. So the idea that she's doing her studies, she completed her course, she can go on to get a good job, that would make her feel proud of herself. Again, very similar to the same one, but again, by achieving a job, she would feel that she's gained something, and that would make her feel positive that she completed the course. Either way, we've got 3 reasons, 3 ways her self-esteem is affected, and 3 explanations of that. And there we go. So that's our 6 marker. And now we move on to our final 10 marker. So this is the 1F question. 1F. Now, what we're looking at here is a 10-mark question. One of the things we want to try and remember is we want to cover a few ideas. We want to try and include a theory, and we want to kind of make sure we've defined the issue and explain what's going on. So we've now got that now Patricia, Joy's mother, is going to college. Joy spends more time at playgroup or being looked after by her great-grandmother and family friends. So it says evaluate the impact of effective bonding on individuals' emotional and social development. Refer to relevant theories in your answer. So what we're going to look at here is a relationship, emotional connections and bonding. So one of the things we want to start off with is maybe start off by defining this. So emotional and social development are affected by a number of things. Factors, probably a better word than things, and is an individual's ability to develop relationships and connections with family, as well as forming connections with peers. So we've kind of defined what emotional and social development are. So what we need to think about now is the effect of this. So maybe we'll kind of put some ideas together. So the theory we can put in is Bowlby. Bowlby states that forming an attachment with primary caregivers, and particularly he focused on the mum, mainly the mum, mainly mothers, is key for being able to form relationships in future life. Individuals with secure attachments are more confident, more likely to have higher resilience. So we've got definition. We've started off with a theory. We've talked about what Bowlby says and why bonding and emotional and social development is important. Now, what we need to do is link this back to the question. We're thinking about Joy. Yes, Joy, the little girl. So it could be that as Patricia has returned to college, Joy will not form as strong a bond. Now I want to just double check, because obviously the age is really important. Bear with me 2 seconds. So we need to come back. So Joy is 2. Yes. So I'm going to kind of evaluate this well. So so Joy's bond with her mother could be reduced, and this may affect her in the future, as she will lack resilience. However, most children develop attachments within the first 2 years, which we call the crucial stage. So we've kind of gone in with, we've defined the issue, what emotional social development is. We've talked about Bowlby and how what he says about forming attachments. We've talked about Patricia returning to college and how that could affect Joy's bond with her mother. We can then kind of think about some of the other connections. So as Joy is cared for by her grandmother, it is possible that Joy will form a wider range of attachments which could help her feel more secure. She has more, or has more people to help protect her. So we've kind of gone down the emotional development, the attachment route, that having been careful by her mother, she's probably going to, or grandmother, sorry, will have more attachments. In terms of social development, Joy will be able to form connections and friendships with other children at the playgroup, because I think it does say she goes, yep, spends more time at playgroup. Obviously, if we're thinking about Piaget and Bowlby and stages of play, it's around this time that children are generally about 2 years of age, are still kind of in that sort of solo play or associative play. But we could suggest that by going to playgroup, she will start to form connections, make friendships, which again is one of those signs of having a secure attachment, that you're able to go on and form friendships. So this could be a sign that Joy has formed secure. However, if we're thinking about downsides, is that Joy would also be at risk of bullying or conflict with. Again, we're kind of trying to balance it out as what could happen. So, and then we're going to conclude this. So, we can say effective bonding. We're going to use the words of the question with other or with primary caregivers is important at an early age, as children with stronger attachments are more likely to be resilient and risk takers. Those with weaker connections are more likely to form poor relationships as adults. So there we go. So that's our 10 marker covered there. So we've defined the issue at the very beginning, slightly long answer there. We've talked about Bowlby, we've got a theory that's ticked off. We've talked about how it relates to Joy, so the fact that she may benefit from this, but also could suffer. We've talked about social development as well, being able to form connections and friendships. We could, if you wanted to, even throw in a theory like Piaget, just to double our kind of theories. And then we've actually summarized by answering the question, using the word in the question. So effective bonding is important because it allows you to form strong attachments. Those without it suffer. So we've covered our 3 points there. So what we'll do before we move on to section 2 is we'll look at the mark scheme, and we'll just look at what we've written and just double check we are on the right path. So we'll come back to the beginning here and take a look at our mark scheme. So I'm going to scroll down here. So the first question was asking about what was unpredictable life events. I'm just going to kind of remember what the question were. Unpredictable life events, trying to find them. I've got the physical paper here, so I'll just open that up so I can keep a reminder of what the questions were. So life events that are unpredictable. Sorry, there we go. So we said divorce and redundancy. Divorce is there for 1. Is redundancy? Yes, redundancy or unemployment. Oh, okay. So we put loss of employment and got rid of it, but redundancy would be fine. You can see here again with a 2 marker, you're just identifying. So no explanation, no elaboration. The only one that isn't accepted is unexpected death of a friend or relative, and the only reason for that is because it mentions that in the item that her husband died. So you wouldn't want to use the same point. But again, any other appropriate alternatives, anything that's relevant, makes sense, would be fine. Right, question 1b, the ranges. So we said infancy 0 to 2, tick. Childhood, when we put childhood, not early childhood, but that's still fine. That's still the same point. 3 to 8, tick. Again, I've just put the numbers 3 to 8. They've put 3 to 8 years. That would be fine. We've got adolescence, 9 to 18, tick. And then early adulthood, 9 to 45. Excellent. So we've also got them in the right order. So that's absolutely fine. We could have had, obviously, if we'd left middle adulthood on there, which would have been 5 points, we wouldn't have picked up an extra mark. They wouldn't have given us 5 marks for 5 bullet points. It would have just meant we would have just got the 4 marks. That's it. Right. Then we've got 1C. So growth is the physical and measurable. And then we've got the example of height, weight, head, circumference. So again, as you said, that 1 + 1 in these answers. So I've put growth is increasing. I've kind of gone the opposite way. So I've given the examples and then said it can be measured. That would be fine. We've then got our whereas, that key seesaw word. And then development, I've put development relates to gaining skills and abilities and then given examples. And then measure of milestones. This has put develops in an orderly sequence, is the acquisition of skills and abilities, credit appropriate examples. Okay, cool. So I've gone a slightly different route. I said about acquiring skills and abilities. I've given examples of those skills or abilities. So there we go. So that's kind of alternative wording is accepted. That would be fine with my answer. Again, doesn't have to match the mark scheme perfectly, just has to be on the right lines generally. 1D was the question, sorry if I just find that in my paper here, was describe the difference between a fine and a gross motor skill. So you've got the description, as I said, that seesaw word in the middle. It's a 1 + 1 style, so you're going to define what the big definitions are, one for gross, one for fine, and then you could give an example. So I've got gross motor skills involve large muscle movements. Gross motor skills, large muscle movements, movement of larger limbs. So I've made the same point. Fine motor skills were small muscles, and then they've got the same point. And then we've got development here. So develop first, sitting, standing. So they've given examples: running, walking, hopping, jumping. So yeah, so running, walking, and moving. I've put there. We go. That's our second mark. Fine motor skills. I said about precise action, picking things up, manipulating objects. And we've got required holding a rattle, pincer movement, pointing, turning pages. So yeah, they've gone down the route of more precise movements or precision movements or practicing. But as I say, any other appropriate wording is fine. So my definition, while not exactly fitting the mark scheme, would still be credible, I would hope. Okay, then 1E was self-concept. So that was it. It was Patricia has gone back to college. How would she feel? How would it affect her self-concept? So a few points here. We've got self-concept raised due to feeling she's finally completed her education, so she could be a good example for her daughter. So okay, so this one we've got self-esteem is raised due to returning to college, making her feel proud of herself and increasing her self-concept. So yeah, so we've got the first 2 points. We could have said, you know, if we'd gone on making a good example for a daughter, that could have been the third point there. We could have done 2 reasons with, you know, a bit of development and then a little extra bit of development. But as we've done, if you've made a point and explained it, do 3 of them, absolutely fine. So Patricia's self-image could be negatively affected due to seeing herself as not being a good mum, full-time mum. So she can't spend quality time with her daughter. So we've done the half bit. Self-esteem affected negatively, and because she may feel guilty for not being a good mum. Then we've got family and friends perception of Patricia could affect positively due to her taking positive steps to improve herself and having a qualifications career plan. So again, you could do the 1 + 1 or 1 + 1 + 1. And then we've got the last one here. Patricia may be older than some of the other learners. That's the point we went. So feeling older. This could negatively affect her self-image. Does not fit in. So yeah, there we go. So our last point here, this would have been worth 3 because it's almost a 1 + 1 + 1 here. and then these first two are worth 1 + 1. So technically we've got 7 marks worth of points here. Again, we're not going to get 7 marks because it's a 6-mark question. Cap, as the question says, maximum of 3. But there we go. We would have got 4 marks for that question. And last but not least, 1F. We'll just take a look at the marking grid for this, and then maybe we'll take a little break here, and then we'll come back to another section in a second. So may refer to 4 stages of attachment. So we've got secure, avoidance. So again, they've gone a little bit deeper in terms of the Bowlby. I've just kind of glossed over Bowlby and given a brief summary. The mark scheme suggests talks about a relationship and early bonding. Father's absent. Reference to Bowlby. We've done that one. We've briefly talked about adult relationships. So I may have actually gone a slightly different route. I've kind of gone down the impact on joy and kind of very generally talked about her care. This is kind of saying how it affects future relationships. Again, behavior, relationships, early relationships. We'll look at the marking grid. Again, these questions tend to have a slightly different marking style. Look at the top band. So demonstrates accurate knowledge and understanding with a few omissions. Evidence of application, demonstrating linkages and interrelationships between factors leading to supported judgments being made. So that linkages and interrelationships does often mean you're making connections to the item. Displays a balanced evaluation demonstrating awareness of competing arguments. So we've got a bit of evaluation in there, that's good. And demonstrates the use of logical reasoning, clarity, and technical language. So again, hopefully, again, you can make the judgment whether you feel this would be a good answer. I feel fairly confident that if I'd wrote this in an exam, it wouldn't. I'm not going to say it would be 10 out of 10, but I would imagine it would probably be the sort of higher end, maybe even hopefully getting into top band, if kind of the examiner agreed. Okay, there we go. So what we'll do, we will leave this here, take a little break, and then obviously we'll move on to our next section. So hopefully this has helped so far. Obviously keep watching out for the follow-up videos as we continue with this paper.